All right, I'm here with Seth Varnadore from Pod by the Bay and his own Varnadore Films. Seth, how are you, man?
I'm good. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So obviously a crazy week. We've got the big Memphis USF game coming up on Saturday. I wish it was much bigger because it would have been college game day, but Memphis lost last week, which is
Yeah.
a heartbreaker. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. Let's talk about the news of the day. We're Florida fans. We cover Florida, and it's Billy Napier's finally gone. Scott Strickland had his last nerve and got rid of him. Um, as a Florida fan, do you take joy in this, or are you more like somber to this? What is your reaction to all of this that just happened last couple of days?
Yeah, I don't really take joy in it because it's one of those things where you just kind of seemed like the logical conclusion after the last couple seasons. It just seemed like this is where it was headed. Really, even after kind of that Arkansas game like 2 years ago, the black jersey game, just seemed like this was going to be kind of the logical end to this.
That's where Ian fell off too. Like literally, that is the moment when Ian was like, he was done at that point. It's crazy that you were both on the same page.
I think that's what a lot of people, and it was in I was writing. I was doing some writing back then, and I just remember thinking after that game, okay, this has got to be the game that sends the signal to them was, all right, I really need to take control of the whole over the top organization. Let somebody else work the offense, right? And so it just never was able to do that. And as somebody who's been in coaching, I understand the want to kind of run a side of the ball, or this is how you kind of came up and this is what you want to do. But at a certain point, you got to just kind of, hey, this is probably better if I delegate some of this stuff because I'm pretty good at this other thing, kind of over the overarching look at the organization. I just was never able to do that. So I think a lot of people, maybe, I don't know, some people are just so over it that it's become personal. But it seems like he was a really good guy. Every time I'd gone to the clinics and like that, seemed like a nice guy, really thoughtful. So you kind of hoped it would work out, but it just, for whatever reason, to me, looking back at the whole tenure, almost every facet of it, it all looked great on paper.
Yeah.
Like the recruiting organization, great on paper. Like even, I know a lot of people ridiculed the offensive stuff, but on paper, like conceptually, a lot of stuff looked really good. It just came down to the final execution of things. Like the team looked great on paper coming into this year.
Yeah.
Just for whatever reason, they couldn't quite execute that last part in all these different areas. And that's what kind of leads up to being under 500 in year 4. So I don't really take joy in it, but it seemed like that's what needed to happen for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, like even to the USF game this year, where it was like they had like 3 or 4 plays called back that were
2 touchdowns called back for
yeah,
sure on kind of ticky-tack penalties.
Yeah, and it was like in the LSU game that was like an 80-yard touchdown brought back, and it's like, man, it was like they just shot themselves in the foot time after time after time. It was like a never-ending story of this, and I thought that like when he was coming in that it was going to be like, like you said, detail-orientated. He was going to be like specific about things and like make sure things are done well and just like, eliminate stupid penalties. But there was like, I mean, and then like the thing with like the too many men or not enough men on like special teams, like throughout his entire tenure, he just never got that corrected. And it's like, I know other teams did it. Like, it's definitely a thing that other teams do. It's not like it doesn't happen, but like he consistently did it almost like every game. Like people looked out for it to see if it was happening, and it still was happening to the very end, which is insane.
Yeah, it's very possible you could have lost that game on a field goal because you weren't able to go for 2 because you put 12 guys on the field. Like it would have been. I'm glad he was able to go out with a win, but it really would have been a perfect capper, like to the whole tenure to lose a game on a last-second field goal because you couldn't go for 2 because you had too many men on the field, which. Going back and looking, so one thing I wanted to do kind of as this was starting to wind down is, all right, I'm going to go back and look and see what I said early when he was hired, what I wrote, just to see kind of what my initial thoughts were and, what kind of, okay, what's the value proposition coming in? And going back and listening, the value proposition for him, it seemed before he was hired, when he was a candidate, was organizational structure, recruiting, all these kind of things. We're going to be, elite organizationally. We're going to recruit. We're going to have, be very detail oriented, not mistake free football, but, not beat ourselves, and then level up the recruiting. And then, all right, we'll have great players and we'll be really good. So, and then you just come in. It's just, it just was never quite there. At times it was, in games it was, but it just never quite got what you were hoping to get. I think the organization got much better and much deeper, but that could just be because they finally spent money on it, Yeah. But that's one thing. He kind of used his leverage to get them to spend money on football a little bit, I think, or more than they had in the past, which I'm sure whoever the next guy is going to have even more leverage. So that'll be interesting to see how that money gets spent. But yeah, just the detail side, the organizational side, again, on paper, very detailed, very organized. Just for whatever reason, maybe because you didn't go in the transfer portal, so you had to play a lot of young players constantly. It just those details didn't quite translate to the field.
Yeah, I mean, I know Scott Strickland said at the press conference on Monday that they're going to look to further where they're at right now and try to get that elite coach and get to championship level. And I think that is where I've been at the last couple of days. The talent is there. Billy did a great job recruiting. There is offensively, there's weapons all over the place. And there's still guys that have plenty of eligibility left. So they're going to be there for at least a year or two. And then defensively, there's enough pieces there to make the defense work. And it's the facilities are great. It seems like the NIL stuff, the infrastructure there is finally on a firm ground. And it seems like the boosters are buying in and wanting to make this a reality. And that's where I'm okay, this job is, 4 years ago when Dan Mullen got fired, it was not where it is now. It was nowhere near close to that because the facilities weren't done. NIL still wasn't a thing, but the recruiting was nowhere. The talent, the depth chart was just decimated. There was nobody on. It was. I'm really amazed Billy did as good of a job recruiting as he did because it was such a deficit that he started with, and to go to the point now where it's this team is the talent level is on par with most every team they play. And that's honestly that hasn't been said since I don't know, since Urban was here maybe. And that is at least something to be glad about. But I don't know, with the coaching search that's going to go on, what are some of your thoughts? Who's your top three? Who do you want them to focus on? Who do you think they'll get? What are some of your thoughts on that?
I think to me, if you can, you want to go get somebody I think this is such a difficult conference to play in that finding somebody that's coached in this conference. I know I think it's a lot of people. It doesn't matter. I think it does a little bit, especially recruiting in the South. You need to have recruited in the South before. I think it is a little bit different. And also, these kids need to know you. I think that was the biggest hurdle for Billy initially. And you even heard it when you had they're talking to Jake Slaughter after, this past week, is he had been out of Power 5 football for such a long time. None of these kids that were recruits knew who he was. Yeah. You know what I mean? So you want to go get a name that people know. Okay, this guy's been recruiting me, or I know this guy. I can kind of put a product out there that I've seen before. Jake Slaughter said this week, I didn't know who Billy Napier was, and he kind of said he didn't know who I was either. But that's kind of the reality of it, is when you go hire a lower level coach, you're not really recruiting from the same pool. So it makes it a little bit more difficult, I think, to build that initial roster. I think Lane Kiffin is the popular name, and he's what I think. Another thing that I think is super important that he's done is you see a lot of hot coaching names, and they've only had. You got to do it across multiple quarterbacks.
Yeah,
I think a lot of times you'll see a guy, his name get really hot in coaching, and then you look and it's oh, he had the greatest quarterback in school history for a 3-year run. That's why they were so good. Willie Taggart's a pretty good example, right? He had
Jimbo
Quentin
Fisher.
Flowers, parlayed that into Oregon, where he had Justin Herbert, and then he parlayed that into FSU, and then I don't have either of those guys anymore. He had Jimbo, had Jameis, parlayed it into big. So what makes Lane so interesting to me is he's had success across multiple quarterbacks, multiple kinds of quarterbacks, and he's always had really good offenses. So I think, and then obviously he took a Ole Miss program that was not, was probably bottom 25% in the SEC, especially when he took over. They were pretty bad and kind of instantly made them competitive. They didn't win a bunch of games, but they were pretty competitive. You remember they were really pesky to that Florida team in 2020, scored a bunch of points on that Alabama team in 2020, his first year. And so he's now built the program that's like in playoff contention last few years. So I think he's definitely the number one guy in terms of, I'd imagine most Florida fans want offense, and they want somebody that's kind of can build that playoff championship program. And so he would be the number one guy for sure. After that, it gets a little dicey. I know some people, there's talk of Marcus Freeman. I don't know how realistic that is. You see some people say, oh, it's already out. It's already gone. You see some people say, oh, no, well, there's rumblings Freeman contacted Florida last year. You never know with those private schools and those high academic schools if recruiting is really difficult there or the transfer portal is really difficult there. So maybe there's it might be easier at Florida to do some things. But I would think that's unlikely. Drinkwitz is another interesting one, but he's another guy. Is he tied too much to his current coordinator, Kirby Moore? Is it Kirby Moore that's made this offense really good the last few years, or is it Drink? That's kind of, he's done really well with NIL, but is that kind of an advantage that's dwindling now that everyone's kind of come around to it? So I don't know. It's good I think if it's not Kiffin, who would seem to be a slam dunk. After that, there's going to be some questions about pretty much anybody you get. Another guy I kind of like. He had a good week last week, but he's a guy that in the past, because his offense is like a supercharged version of Napier's a little bit in terms of zone, and he'll use multiple tight ends. But Jeff Brom has been a really, really good coach, I think, for a while, starting at Purdue, undermanned, and then Louisville. Obviously, they've been doing pretty well and got the big win last week. But he would be interesting. But, I think after Kiffin, it's kind of just you're casting a wide net, and there's questions with everybody. So I don't know. I think it would behoove them to go pay that money and get Kiffin if they can.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you that the sentiment on all of them. I think I'm not really sold on Drinkowitz. I think his personality kind of clashes, and I think it's more of like a McElwain type situation, and that didn't really work out well. So I think he could do all right. He's been fortunate the last couple of years because he's had a very relatively easy schedule.
That's the other part of it.
Yeah,
he's kind of gotten the anti-Napier schedule the last couple of years.
Exactly. Yeah, his SEC slate has been somewhat soft, and then his non-con is
cupcake
nothing. It's been maybe one or two games in the last 3 years that have been tough, while Florida played 3 tough games this year in non-conference. But let's I think we should put a pin on this because I think that's enough on this. Let's go into the USF-Memphis breakdown. So, I didn't get really a chance to watch the game live last week because I was at a concert, but I kept checking in. I had the phone on, and I was trying to keep pace with everything. And then I watched the highlights, the package on Sunday, and it was relatively standard USF game. There wasn't anything crazy. FAU was kind of in the game there for a little bit into the second half, but once things got off the rails, USF really kind of put it to them. But the thing that I really want to talk about is Memphis on Saturday loses to UAB, and then also now they might have injury to their quarterback Lewis, and as of right now, what I'm looking at, it looks like reports that he's day to day, and they are like back and forth with either him or what's the other guy, Hill, maybe playing. And so, and I even saw something about the number 3 potentially even playing.
Yeah.
So like, I'm like, oh Lord, what are they doing? But Hill and Lewis are pretty similar, like football like styles. I think Hill's got a stronger arm, like from what I saw.
If I remember, Hill was a guy that Florida was recruiting as well.
I mean, he doesn't look bad. Like I
He
saw
ended up
some of
going
his
to
throws,
Memphis
and I'm
with
like,
that FedEx money.
yeah, that's right. And like he's probably not as fast as Lewis, but he's still like athletic. But both of them pose problems in the the RPO game. And then the real key to Memphis is their dual-headed running back situation with, I don't know how to say his name, and I'm not even going to try. I guess I'm going to try because you have to say his name. How do you say this name?
I think it's like DeRosier, maybe.
DeRosier, yes. Okay, I'm like, I didn't hear it for a while, so I couldn't remember it. I didn't want to like butcher.
I was just looking at a highlight package, so I think it's close at least.
Okay, DeRosier, but he had an amazing game against FAU, and then Smith went off against Arkansas, and then they've both kind of like had some games where they're like not as productive, but them as a package deal, Smith is like a little more slender. DeRosier is a little more bulkier guy, but they're both super quick and they make plays. So this USF defense is going to be on their heels a little bit here in this game. I feel like this is probably the best offensive team they've played outside of Miami, and I just feel like if USF is able to key on the run game, I think they can take them out of it. But again, their quarterbacks are still capable of making explosive plays, which they did in a lot of these games to really like set themselves up. Your thoughts on USF's defense coming in this game and with their matchup against Memphis's offense?
I think a lot of it is going to depend on the Brendan Lewis, because you go and look through some of their numbers. He is, I think he might be their leading rusher in terms of yards, or he's pretty close to it. I don't know if this number includes sacks or anything, but if you look at kind of their advanced rushing stats, he's responsible for a ton of like explosive runs and things like that. So I think if he doesn't have that element to his game, even if he plays, that'll be really helpful in terms of controlling the run game. If he's fully healthy, I think you're on that. It's like a really, really difficult offense to play against with those backs, and he can throw it all right. But if that element is out, I think that makes things a lot easier. He has thrown some interceptions this year, hasn't been super clean. So, I think it really depends on his health. Those three, Sutton Smith, Brendan Lewis, and DeRosier, are all averaging over 6.5 yards a carry on DeRosier's got 55 carries. So like they're doing pretty, he's the lowest, right? So they're all that's kind of a three-headed monster there. So if I think if Lewis is out, it obviously helps you a ton. But if he's playing and he's somewhat close, I heard someone say he was on crutches at the end of the game, but he's day-to-day now. Who knows? But they are like the number one rushing team in the country in terms of EPA, rushing EPA. So they are explosive and they're pretty successful down to down. But Lewis is a big part of that. So if he's not playing, I think it makes it much easier for you. But this may be one where, if you've got to load up the box and play more man coverage, I don't think USF is opposed to doing that. They like to play man coverage, so it won't be something brand new for them. But those can get to those shootout-y type games if you get into that kind of situation. So USF went out and got a bunch of big bodies up front for games like this, so they didn't probably have to blitz as much and load the box as much. So we'll see how those guys hold up. But I think it'll be a tough matchup if Lewis is fully healthy.
Yeah, definitely. And then as far as the other side of the ball with USF on offense, from what I saw, because I looked at the three different games that were really like the core games of Memphis's season so far. I looked at UAB, I looked at the Arkansas game, and I looked at FAU, and they gave up a lot of points. They gave up 31 to UAB, they gave up 31 to Arkansas, and they gave up 26 even to FAU. And that game in the fourth quarter was like a 1-score game. So like it kind of got out of hand. Like there was like a bunch of turnovers late that made it look a lot worse.
And I think FAU kept going for like fourth down and giving them short fields and things like that, just because there was, that game state. So
yeah. But the funny thing is FAU in that game against USF, they went for it 7 of 8 times, which is kind of
it was really dink and dunk.
Yeah,
they didn't have any, and so it would be 4th and 5, and they'd get 6. It'd be 4th and 4, they'd get 5. It was just like the barely converting by a half yard. It was just kind of annoying.
I was like, I've never seen that many conversions.
Yeah, and they went to it early, so it was early in the first half. They're like, all right, we're going. So yeah, that was a strange game.
No, but as far as Byram, obviously his health is important, because if he's healthy, they can still make the offense move quickly and be productive. But does this Memphis defense pose that much of a threat to USF, or do you feel like Golish is going to be able to scheme it up, get them the explosives that they need, get the run game going? They're almost every game that USF has had this year has been balanced, has been like 250 passing, 250 rushing, like almost every game. It's kind of amazing how balanced they've been. I don't think they're intentionally doing that, like to specifically get it to that number, but it's been pretty enjoyable as someone that loves math. But what do you feel like coming into this game? Do you feel like Byram is going to be able to have his way with the Memphis defense?
Well, we talked about it last time I was on before USF played Florida. Golish always seems to have something up his sleeve in these big games. He does a really good job having something new, some kind of wrinkle, and he usually breaks them out in these big games. So I'm sure he'll have something. But looking at kind of Memphis's defensive numbers, they're really bad against the pass. Yeah. And USF now, they'll be down. Chaz Nimrod will not play, I don't think, this week.
I knew that. That's
yes. So I think he'll be out maybe until I think he may be back next week. But what's been nice is you've had a bunch of young guys step up, like Jeremiah Koger. He's kind of stepped up and played. Christian Neptune's played a ton. So you feel, if you've got to get into your depth, receiver's probably your best position for that, because you got a bunch of guys that have shown they can make plays. So I think they'll be all right there. But it seems like Memphis is pretty bad against the pass. It doesn't look like by the numbers they're particularly great at rushing the passer. It's not like they're generating a ton of pressure this year. It looks like they're 55th in the country in pressure rate, not getting a ton of sacks. It seems like they don't allow a ton of scrambles, but I would imagine you see USF run Byram a ton, not just on scrambles, but kind of just design runs. That seems to be kind of their go-to in these big games too, is they can spread you out and then run him into lighter boxes, and he's just such a hoss that he'll break at least one tackle, it seems like, every time he gets it. So I think USF's offense should be all right in this game. So it will be obviously if they can kind of replace Nimrod, which I think they'll be able to, they should be able to throw it around a little bit. And if they can do that, should get them lighter boxes to run into. So that's where you kind of get to that balance you were talking about.
Yeah, and like I was looking at the stats between those 3 games that I looked at, they only had 2 total sacks between the 3 games. So like, yeah, they're not getting a ton of pressure. They didn't really look like the quarterbacks in the highlight packages I saw of all 3 games. They never seemed like they had plenty of time. If it was Taylon Green with Arkansas, who had a huge game against them, they just somehow miraculously fumbled that game away. They were in field goal range. And then UAB was able to move the ball pretty well. They were able to run the ball. They were pretty effective on both sides of the offensive attack. But the FAU game, it seemed more of like they got explosives through the aerial attack. But I was not impressed with this defense. I feel like Byram's going to have a good day. I feel like he should put up again. Like his numbers have basically been like 250 and like 100 rushing, like
It's crazy.
yeah, it's like every game, and it's just like, which I'm surprised that he has not got a ton of Heisman hype after those first couple of games. It's kind of like gone away, and it's like he's still putting up numbers. I don't know what they want out of him, but regardless, this sets up this rest of the season though, because if they win this game, like they only really have to beat Navy for the most part, and they should get to the American Conference Championship game. So, like this is it. Like this is the culmination of 3 years of Alex Golesh, like getting to this point. You know, beating North Texas 2 weeks ago, beating FAU, and now it's like this is it. This is the moment that we've all been waiting for, and it's like it's exciting. Like I've seen the times of Jim Leavitt when they failed miserably on those Thursday nights against Rutgers, and I even remember you. I don't know if you remember this. I think it was 2004. There was a game where they lost to Army like 31-0 or something like that. And I remember like all my USF friends back in the day were always like, they lamented that game so much. And I think it was like a homecoming game too. But like, there's been so many moments in USF where like these like fall, like, you trip on your own feet, and like, it's just, I don't know. I'm excited, and I hope that they can do it. I do feel like they can do it. I mean, it's like this team, this is the best team they've had since probably the 2017 team. And like,
yeah,
I just feel like if this is the moment, they got to do it now. But do you have any more thoughts before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you kind of mentioned the schedule going forward. If you, I don't know if you follow Kelly Ford, K Ford ratings, he puts this Memphis game at kind of a 54% win percentage for USF. But after that, you've got Navy at a 76% chance to win that game. Everything else is about 85 or above. So if this is a big swing game, if they win this one, I wouldn't say punch your ticket to a conference championship, but it's pretty close. So, this is a big swing game for them. And they went from being a underdog last week to now they're, I think they're 5.5 point favorite now. They were 3.5 point underdog last week. So, hopefully you got a look ahead line last week if you want to bet USF. But it seems like it's moving their positive direction. So this is a big swing game. If they can get this one, I think you start thinking playoffs.
God, that's crazy. I mean, like, and it's like, I know the chances are if they go into a playoff game, it's going to be on the road, and it's going to be a tough environment, and they're going to play like, I don't know,
play at Oregon, at Georgia.
Oh man!
I mean, we're talking about cool, right? Like on one of these big I mean, that's what you dream about right there. Going first round playoff game on the road, one of these college football cathedrals.
If it happens,
nice.
If it happens, I'm going. Like I'm like not even like thinking twice about it. Like I'm buying the ticket. I don't really care.
Yeah, we're keeping some powder dry at the Bay Area Examiner just in case. We're like we're holding some money back here just in case we need to make a big travel, because there's not going to be many guys opting out of that trip. So
no, not at all, man. But Seth, great talking to you. Definitely come back. I love chopping it up about Florida and USF. But again, thank you again, man.
Hey, anytime. Thanks.
What's up, everybody? Hey, that was our interview with Seth. I just getting this sorted out. Give me a second. There we go. Now we're back to normal. Ian, how are you?
I'm doing good. Definitely was listening in on Seth, wanting to hear him about the whole Billy Napier situation, who should get hired, and then, of course, the USF breakdown, which I think every USF fan under the sun has been doing. It's a very anxious couple days to Saturday, obviously, but yeah, it was good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, Seth is super knowledgeable, and I am grateful that he's been coming on. I like those guys at Pod by the Bay. They're honestly like Robert Stieg, and I can't remember the other gentleman's name, the guy with red hair, but they're great. They honestly, they're like one of the best. They're probably the best USF like media out there, and I definitely lean on them for any knowledge I can get because I don't really like 620 and 995.3. Like they've been, I don't know. They seem like they've got an axe to grind with USF, which I'm not really a fan of because they've been like, I don't know what it is. Tampa sports media. The only one I like, the main like Tampa sports media of like the big dogs is that guy from Channel 10. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Evan Klosky. That guy's great. That guy is like super on it. And like he's knowledgeable of like everything he covers, but I don't know, the WDAE has just been lacking the last several years. I used to listen to them a ton when I was growing up. Like, a lot of those guys are gone. No doubt. Like Ian Beckles and Ron Diaz are long gone, and obviously Big Dog passed away, and some of the other ones that were there. I like T-Kraz, but that's about like the only guy I really like. And I like Zach Blobner, and then they freaking fired Zach, and I'm like, I don't get it. I like Zach a ton, and I wish he'd still be there. I don't know what they saw or what data they looked at that told them to get rid of him, but they obviously made a mistake. But let's get into it. This is the Week 9 preview. My name is Chris McLean. I'm with my co-host Ian Gibson. So let's jump into it. So we got, honestly, Ian, I was looking at the slate. It's not that big of a slate this week. There were not a ton of good games. I was like, okay, this is kind of weird. We're like close to 2/3 of the way done, and some of these games are kind of, even the ones I have on this list aren't that great. Outside of like 4 games, really. But let's jump into it. So we got the first game. We got UCLA. So we cover 4 teams. We cover UCLA. We cover USC because I'm in LA. And then we also cover Florida and USF because me and Ian are fans of both those schools, and we went to USF. So let's get into it. All right. UCLA in this game, coming off a 3-game win streak where they beat Penn State 42-37, beat Michigan State, but that I'm ignoring that because Michigan State is not very good, but they beat a decent Maryland team 20-17. The thing that stands out to me in that game was Nico did not have a good game. I think if they have any chance at all in this game, because he had 2 picks in the Maryland game, if they're going to have a chance, like just like a glimmer of hope in this game, because Indiana is so good, and we'll get into them in a second. But if they want any chance, Nico is going to have like his best game that he ever had at Tennessee, that he's ever had at UCLA. It's got to be like fire in a bottle. Like it's got to be perfect. And I think he's capable. I like Neuheisel as the play caller. I feel like they can score some points. They've been doing quite well the last 3 weeks. This is their biggest test by far. Like it's not even close. Like this is like right now, this is essentially the juggernaut of college football right now is Indiana. And it's weird to say that. Yeah. Honestly, it is. And I know we talk about this all the time since Indiana's got good, but it is a reality because Cignetti is the real deal. But no, I feel like if he has a good game, they have a shot. But I don't feel like they're going to win this game. I feel like the Hoosiers are going to win. And I think they're probably going to win by like 10 points. And I hate that because I wish UCLA could really push them. But I think Indiana is going to kind of be in control most of the game. And then like the fourth quarter, they're probably up like 17 and maybe like UCLA scores a late one. And I'm sorry, Richard. I know I've been a huge UCLA honk all year, but I'm just not a believer in this game. So I'm going to say like Indiana wins like 30-20. What do you got, Ian?
I think the key in this game too will be for UCLA how well they can run the ball right now, because Amaliava has been having to do everything, and they need support from their running backs, and we've seen it, especially in the Penn State game. We've seen glimpses of it, but against this Indiana defense, which I know is kind of similar to Texas Tech, a lot of people rave about how good the offense has been, and rightfully so. Indiana has the most, prettiest offense that we've seen in the country right now, but they're still just as good defensively. You want any questions about that? Ask Oregon, ask Illinois about how good that defense can be in shutting them down. And that's going to be the thing for UCLA too. All the teams that they've played on their winning streak are in like the middle to back half. Like Michigan State has the worst defense in the Big Ten per stats. So Indiana's like third, I believe, last time I checked, or fourth in the Big Ten in overall defense. So I feel like Indiana, they're going to obviously just tell Amaliava, it's you against the world again. And this time, I don't think there's enough that he has to overcome this Indiana team. Of course, there's always the hope that Indiana pulls a Penn State and kind of just sleeps on them. But Magnetti has stated that we're focused on this team. They're technically 3-0. Is what they're rating them. So I seriously doubt they're going to lose concentration and kind of sleepwalk in this one. And I think UCLA is going to do everything they can, but I think Indiana runs away in the end. I'm going to go with a 37-20 win for the Hoosiers.
Yeah, and I think one of the other keys I have in my notes is, again, with Nico, the last two really games that stand out for Indiana were the Iowa game and the Oregon game that they won both those games. And in both of those games, they forced both Iowa and Oregon to throw 2 interceptions. So again, if Nico is throwing, if he's the reason for these turnovers, this could be a long day for UCLA, and it may even be worse than 10 points. Like you said, it could be like a 17-point game, which with the strengths of Indiana, it is definitely possible. So let's move on. Next one we got is Ole Miss, Oklahoma. Ole Miss coming off that loss to do I have it? Where is it on? Sorry. Georgia, sorry. I'm just looking at my notes. So they lost to Georgia 43-35 last week. The other game that they had that they looked better in was the LSU game. They won 24-19. Chambliss looked better in the LSU game, but he didn't have any turnovers in the Georgia game. They really only, in that game, there was only 2 punts between the two teams, which was remarkable. You don't see that often, especially with a defense like Georgia. But defense for Georgia this year has been lacking, to say the least. Stockton had a huge day against Ole Miss's defense. And conversely, Nussmeier kind of struggled against Ole Miss. So maybe in this game, what needs to happen, because if you look at the other side on Oklahoma, Napier against Michigan had a great game and then struggled in the Texas game and they lost. So if they can get to Napier, if they can limit him, obviously that's kind of like a very basic rudimentary analysis, but it's telling because Napier is the engine that propels the Oklahoma offense. If he's not up to snuff in this game, like he wasn't in Texas in the Red River rivalry, he had 3 interceptions. If he has multiple interceptions again, I know this is like a simplistic thing, but it's pointing out the analysis here. Like literally, if you don't see these trends and things in these games, it's like, this is what I'm doing. I'm researching these things and looking at why these teams are losing, why the defenses are just playing them better. And if Ole Miss is not up to snuff, they're going to get burnt like they did against Stockton, which I feel like can happen. The game's in Oklahoma. It's in Norman. I feel like Napier got better last week. It was an easier opponent, so it was a little bit easier for them to like ease into that game. South Carolina's kind of wounded right now. I like Oklahoma in this one. I think Napier has a decent game, like 250 yards, maybe like 50 rushing. And their defense is – that's the other thing is like Oklahoma's defense is very stout. They held Texas to 17 or 16 offensive points. They had that punt return for a touchdown. Mm-hmm. So the defense held Michigan to 13. Like they held South Carolina to 7. Like they're a dominant defense, and they get a ton of sacks. They had like 10 or 11 sacks against Auburn. So like they're going to get to Chambliss. Like there's no doubt in my mind this is going to be a long day for Chambliss, but it really hinders on Napier's play. If Napier has a good game, I feel like Oklahoma should dominate this game, and not necessarily dominate, but they should win. And I think they should win by at least like, I don't know, 8 or 9 points. I'm going to go with Oklahoma winning like 29 to like 22. What do you got?
So doing the homework on this game, I noted that obviously Oklahoma is still ranked 13th in the country. And I thought about it and I was like, look, we've had a lot of talk, especially with Lane, as Gator fans, ranked wins and how often they've come. For the Ole Miss program, they have not had a ranked road win since 2023 against Tulane. And if you want to go even more specific, they have not had a top 10 win against any team since 2016 on the road against Texas A&M. So there's a lot of like history against Ole Miss playing ranked teams on the road. They just somehow, in the SEC, they just somehow don't get the job done. But in this game here, I agree with you. I think Oklahoma's defense can do enough to stop Ole Miss's offense, but I'm really wondering, can Oklahoma's offense produce, get enough points on the board? And the other thing is that Ole Miss, like I said, after the Arkansas game, the defense has gotten a lot better since then. They held Tulane to 10 points. They held LSU, and then when it got scary with Washington State, the offense, just decided to be MIA. The defense came up and got enough stops. And then obviously, then Georgia happened. But it's tough. I feel like in this one, Oklahoma can, if the defense can get enough stops, but again, with Chambliss, he's able to move around in the pocket and also the rushing attack, if it starts clicking again, can, really make life hard for Oklahoma. It's kind of similar to what Texas was doing in that second half. The run game was getting to 4 to 5 yards per carry. And if Ole Miss can do that, which they very well can with running backs like Lacey, I think they can do it. I'm going to take Ole Miss in this one, in a very close one. I like Oklahoma's defense, but I'm not sure they're going to have enough points compared to Ole Miss's offense to get enough points on the board. So I'm going to go Ole Miss winning a close one. I'm going to go with a 27-23 win for the Rebels.
Yeah, and I feel like it's not going to be a blowout either way. I feel like both of these teams are evenly matched. They're potential playoff teams, and this is kind of like a playoff eliminator, essentially, because at this point, if both of them, whoever the loser is, they'll have 2 losses. It's going to be very difficult to try to get into the playoff with that situation. But who knows? There's still a long season. We still have, this is week 9. We still have 5 weeks after this. So, like, there's a lot to go down. Okay. Next game we have is Virginia-UNC. I mean, I don't know too much about this UNC team outside of the fact that they've gotten smoked in quite a few games. So I really haven't paid too much attention to them. I have watched UVA. I did a lot of review on them before the Florida State game, and I picked that UVA to win in that game, and then watched the Louisville highlight package, and they actually did not play very well in that game and were lucky to win it. It was really those defensive scores to keep them in that game, and they forced overtime. They did what they needed to once they got to overtime, but like they were really kind of, farting around there. They only had 237 yards to Louisville's 383. So they were kind of outmatched, but because of those 2 turnovers, it really was the difference in the game. You need Chandler Morris to have a good game against North Carolina, but I don't think North Carolina is good enough. Like, they have struggled in like all their big time matchups, TCU, Cal, Clemson. They just don't look good enough this year. Belichick doesn't look like a good coach college wise. I don't know what's going to go on. Like, you got boosters and reports saying that he's getting fired and whatnot, or they're like getting rid of him and they're, having talks about what's going on. And I don't know. Like, we talked about it before. We knew this was going to be a bad situation. Like, this was not going to work out. And I feel like this is just another step in that direction. I think UVA is just a better team. As far as UVA's schedule, I know that they have a little bit of a lighter load because they don't have, like, outside of that Louisville game, they don't have like a ton of tough matchups the rest of the year. That Washington State game was a real landmine that they escaped. But they've got Wake Forest, Va-Tech, who fired their coach. Really, the only game left for Virginia the rest of the year is that Duke game, and it's in Durham, so it'll be tough. But I feel like Virginia should win this game. I feel like they should win at least by 10 points. I'm going to say they win like probably 28-18. What do you got?
You mentioned you don't know about this UNC team. I don't even think North Carolina knows about this North Carolina team.
Yeah, exactly.
The program is just it's a joke, and it really annoys me seeing a college football program. I'm not saying North Carolina is a blue blood, but they've had history. Yeah, and to see them get like thrown in the mud like this, it's a joke. So, not going to waste breath on them. I'll say this: the only hope is that Virginia. Gave them a nickname, the Cardiac Calves. 2 straight overtime wins and then a safety win. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah,
but I got no faith in North Carolina doing this. Virginia would have to self-destruct in order for North Carolina to win this. And same thing with the rest of their schedule. I mean, Duke is the only one, especially since that NC State game didn't count as a conference record.
Yeah.
So, and then Va-Tech, I mean, because it's a rivalry game, you never know what happens in those. But the path is pretty clear for them to kind of go undefeated and fall into the ACC championship. But
crazy.
I don't see, same thing though with North Carolina. I don't see them winning another game unless the team on the other sideline just completely falls on their face. I'll take the Cavs winning this one 35-14.
Yeah, and it's crazy because it's like you were talking about, like, not a blue blood, but they were, with Mac Brown, they were a good team for like both of his tenures. Like, they had pretty decent bowl games the last couple of years, and like when his first tenure, they were really good. They were like ranked several times in the 90s, and it's like they're not a bad program. They just, I don't know. They just need to get something figured out. They need a younger coach to take over that can really like grow into being that coach and just give him some time. I don't know. And maybe it takes like an alum or something, because bringing on a 73-year-old who's, basically on vacation with his fiance, wife, whatever, 26-year-old that is running things. It's just not a good recipe for success. And not that I am the biggest North Carolina fan, but it would be better to see them more competitive since they play Florida State all the time. Okay, let's move on to the game we talked about. I already gave my thoughts, so I'm just going to give your thoughts on this for USF-Memphis. So go ahead, Ian.
Totally agree, especially with that caption. This is the biggest game since 2017 because, like Seth said, it's not a clincher, but the path is clear after that because they're favored in a lot more of these games. And again, call it battered bowl syndrome or something. Still not comfortable because they've done this before. But the thing is, too, is that Memphis's quarterback got injured in that game against UAB. So we don't know they said he was still day-to-day. We don't know if who was the guy they brought in, either the backup who came in or the freshman on the bench. And even then, I heard them say that they might just use a 2-quarterback system, which might be a blessing in disguise for that USF defense.
It's Lewis is the main starter, and then Hill is the backup.
Got ya. Yeah. So, yeah, it's going to be it's tough with this game. And someone was Seth. Memphis has been very good against the run, but I feel like with the RPO play that USF can deploy, especially with Byram, who can move the pocket around and run there, even without Nimrod, they can get enough big plays done. Kind of similar to what they did with North Texas, but similarly, you have to play a full 4 quarters. You have to play, put the pedal to the metal, because Memphis, just because they lost to UAB does not mean they're going to go down without a fight. I'm in this game. USF's defense has improved, and I feel like after that North Texas game, which is kind of a similar, I don't think it's as big as this one, but it was kind of that similar environment. You're on the road, big game that's going to help decide who goes to the conference championship, and the defense then locked it down in the second half and forced turnovers. I think they can do that here. I think USF gets it done. I somehow think they get it done. I think they make enough plays, and I don't see Memphis's offense keeping up, especially if the defense, locks them down. If the defense can hold them to like 24 points, USF's got this. So I'm going to go USF winning. Let's go 31-24 Bulls.
Yeah, and I didn't give a prediction when we were talking with Seth, so I'm probably along the same lines. I think like I said in the interview, I don't feel like Memphis's defense is strong enough to stop Byram. I think Byram's going to be able to do pretty much everything he's been doing all year, and really only Miami stopped him all year for the most part, and in Florida too. But I feel like, if they can make plays on offense and do enough on defense, I don't think they have to like completely shut out Memphis and prevent them from doing stuff. I think if they're just, playing complementary football, making enough stops to get Byram in position to score, I think that works out. And if they just stay ahead of schedule and they're like leading most of this game, I think they can control that. They've done a really good job of being in the lead almost every game they've played outside of Florida and Miami. So I feel like they can get the lead in this and they can win it. So I'm going to go USF winning 34 to like 26. All right. And that would be great, because that would mean that USF is in the driver's seat for the American Conference Championship, which, ooh boy. Let me tell you.
Yeah.
Let me tell you. I'm like hard pressed. Is like, should I go to the American Conference Championship game if it's in Tampa, or should I wait potentially to go to the playoff game that they go to? And like, I can't afford both. If I'm going to do one, it's going to be either one of those. It's like one.
We'll talk after the show. There might be some strings. I'll let you know. Let's get through Memphis first before we
exactly. Let's not talk about this. Let's figure this out. Let's just let it happen. Okay. Moving on to Alabama, South Carolina. I don't have much faith in this South Carolina team. They've really imploded. I think they're on a 4-game losing streak, if I'm not mistaken. And Sellers has been struggling pretty mightily outside of that LSU game. And they only had 7 points last week against Oklahoma. And then on the flip side, Alabama is on like a heater right now. Since that loss to Florida State, they've beaten 4 ranked teams in a row. They beat Tennessee. They beat Missouri. They beat Vanderbilt. They've just been dominant. Like they really like Ty Simpson is front runner for the Heisman right now. He's putting up huge numbers. And I feel good for the kid, because it's like, I don't know, there's like something about where it's like if a player gets disrespected and doesn't get to play, like Kyle Trask's story, or like even Jalen Hurts when he was at Alabama, I respect those guys on such a level. It's like, man, they like really stood it out and like waited their time and did what they needed to do. And I know Jalen Hurts did transfer, but he still stayed, and he was the reason that they won that SEC championship game, like in 2018 or whatever year it was. No, I like Ty Simpson a ton. I think he's doing tremendous here. Jam Miller's a stud. Ryan Williams is putting up numbers. I like my actual favorite like player on Bama right now is Jeremy Bernard. That kid, man, he just puts up numbers. He does stuff in the run game. He's just, and I don't think he gets as much coverage because of Ryan Williams. Ryan Williams gets like a bunch of the notoriety, but like Bernard is a stud, man, and he just puts up numbers every week. But defensively, they're doing better. They're making the difference there. They held Missouri in check for the most part defensively. And then they did a really good job against Tennessee. And I don't know, this South Carolina team just they lost to LSU 20-10. They lost to Oklahoma 26-7. They're looking lost. They don't have an identity. They Sellers goes back on these pass plays and he's running for his life every time. And there's no rhyme or reason to their offensive identity. And when you have that, much like Florida had, they really couldn't figure things out. And so when you're struggling on offense, you're just not going to do anything. And I don't expect them to win this game. I'm going to say Bama wins this relatively easy. I'm going to say they win 35-14. What do you got?
So somehow, some way, if you look at the stats, offensive leaders in total production in the SEC, South Carolina is in last place behind Kentucky, Florida, offenses that have not looked good at all. They're in last place. Rough. So, I just don't see the offense for South Carolina getting enough points compared to what Bama's, going to do. And it might just come down to Bama can out-athlete South Carolina. So I'm going to take the Bama winning this one, and I think they run away with it. I'm going to go with a 38-17 win for the Tide.
Okay, moving on to Missouri Vanderbilt. College game day is here. It's so topsy-turvy this year because it's you got Indiana doing well, you got Vanderbilt doing well, and, who would have thought 10 years ago if you'd have said both between those two teams 7 games into the year, there's one loss between them and several top 10 wins between them as well. And it's I don't think anyone would have believed it. I know we keep talking about this, but it is refreshing. I like Clark Lee as a coach. The guy is just, man, you have to find, as these schools that are trying to make something of their programs, you have to find an alum that will not leave. Clark Lee is from Nashville, grew up a Vanderbilt fan before he played for them, and then came back. He is he's basically Steve Spurrier essentially. And that goes a long way to building relationships and dealing with the alumni and the boosters and getting facilities built. I mean, the stadium is looking a lot better.
Yeah.
What they've done looks like night and day from how bad it was. I mean, I used to play the video game in 04, 05, and that stadium was terrible. And now it looks like a legitimate, cool stadium. And, let's get into the game though. So Missouri, I feel after they beat Auburn, barely beating Auburn 23-17, Perbula had a bunch of interceptions, and he had a bunch of interceptions in the Bama game. He cannot keep playing like this because Vanderbilt is very opportunistic, and they rely on the teams making mistakes to really put them in position to take advantage of it. So if Perbula is making mistakes, throwing interceptions, that only plays into Vandy's hand, giving them short fields for Pavia to do his magic. Pavia doesn't put up huge numbers, but he does put up good enough numbers to make a difference, especially in that LSU game. They kind of got beat pretty significantly against Bama. They were still in it for most of the way through, but I don't know. I like Vandy in this game. I haven't been the hugest fan of Missouri because I felt like their schedule was so soft. Vandy, on the other hand, has not had a soft schedule. They've played a pretty tough road so far, and I feel like they're the better team, and I feel like Vandy's going to win this one, and I'm going to say it's going to be close. I'm going to say like a 27-24 game. What do you got, Ian?
I remember I should have posted it on the Twitter. There was a meme that came out of Vandy and Indiana in the top 10, and it was the Paul Rudd, like, look at us. Who would have thought? Yeah. Like, for kids who weren't around, this is what 2007 was like. It's up there. Regardless, going into the game, the thing about Missouri, especially with these games, they had a blowout win against Louisiana, UMass, those games, but against SEC or equal competition, it's been close. I'm going to kind of excuse the Kansas game because that's a rivalry. Both sides hate each other, so I'm going to let that one slide. But they won, I think it was like 29-20 against South Carolina, and then they had to go into overtime against Auburn, teams they should be better in. Now, credit, they gave Bama all they could handle. But for Vandy, they have really just found a way, minus the Alabama game, to just kind of put enough distance and put the game away early. And I feel like with that, that's where Vanderbilt has the advantage, especially in the ground game. If they control the time of possession, Missouri's not going to have the ball on enough to answer. So I think that's going to be what happens. Vanderbilt wins the time of possession and has like an average yard carry of like 5-6 yards. And I think Vandy gets it done. I'm going to go with a 27-20 win for the Commodores.
Nice. Okay. Moving on to BYU, Iowa State. Iowa State's really fallen off. They beat Arizona 39-14. They lost to Cincinnati 38-30, and then they lost last week to Colorado. Becht is a solid quarterback. He's definitely, very experienced, and he puts up decent numbers. They did well against Fafita in that Arizona game, but in the game against Cincinnati, they Sorsby didn't run wild on them, but Pryor for Cincinnati had a huge game, and then another running back, Walker, had 89 yards. So they put up a huge rushing total, Cincinnati did, against Iowa State. So you can run the ball against them. And BYU is a pretty efficient offense. They're not huge numbers, but they're effective. Like I've always said, they're very good at the details of football, and so that they can do the little things to make the difference in their games. And they're very sound. They don't make many mistakes. But I will say Bear Bachmeier struggled in that Arizona game. He had 2 picks. But in the Utah game, he did not have a pick. And that game was close. Utah was able to run the ball quite well. And, again, I feel like with this BYU team, they've got something going here. The defense is strong enough. I think they've got enough offensive output to make up, they don't have to score a ton of points because their defense can keep them in games. So I'm going to say BYU wins 23-16. What do you got?
So I'm trying not to. This has trap written all over it because Iowa State is not a bad team still. They have had bad games.
Yeah, exactly.
And they've lost 2 bad. I mean, were getting run out the door against Cincinnati, and then they lost one they shouldn't have in Colorado. But now they come home, and now BYU, after a really big win against their hated rival in the Holy War, They win the Holy War against Utah, but similar to last year, they had everything in front of them in the Big 12, and then they lost to Kansas and then got blown out by Iowa State. This is where it's going to be key, is minimizing turnovers, which is what killed them last year, both against Iowa State and Kansas. I feel like Iowa State, they have a game plan with every team, and if they run it effectively where they know, BYU is going to be committed to the run, they're going to be trying to, maybe some RPO plays. So if they play keep away a bit, and if the defense is forcing, but not saying Bachmeier can't throw, but if they force it to where it's like 3rd and long situations, Iowa State's got them right where they want them. They have to stop the run game. Man. And I'm going to take BYU in this one. But fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Because I'm literally getting, flashbacks to last year. Because once they beat Utah in that, kerfuffle of a game, because it always is with the Holy War, then they lost to Kansas right after everybody's like, oh, they beat Utah. Now, the path is clear for the Big 12 championship. And then they lost 2 in a row. But I'm going to take them in this one because BYU's defense has really stepped up, and I like that. And I don't think Iowa State has the offense to overcome that. I think the Cougars get it done. I'm going to go with a low-scoring affair. I'm going to go with a 24-20 win for BYU.
Nice. Okay, let's move on to Illinois, Washington. I mean, this is not really like a standout game. Both these teams have 2 losses, but it is interesting just because we have very limited games this week. It's, again, like I said, it's not – the slate is not great. But Illinois, they're coming off their loss to Ohio State, 34-16. A couple weeks before that, they had beaten USC 34-32, and they looked really good in that one. They were able to convert a lot of 3rd downs and 4th downs to really make a difference in that game and keep the ball moving. They had 502 yards in that game against USC, which is really good. And but their defense gave up 490 to USC, so it's not good. Illinois, in their game against Ohio State, it wasn't like they got destroyed defensively because Ohio State only had 272 yards. The difference was they had a turnover margin of -3, which you're not going to win many games if you're -3 in the turnover margin. So, got to clean that up, clean up the turnovers. Washington, on the other hand, they beat Rutgers 38-19, but they're coming off a loss to Michigan where they lost 24-7. I don't know. I mean, Michigan is a solid team. They're not a great team this year, but they're solid. Their defense is sound, and Washington just really couldn't do much against them. DeMond Williams had 3 interceptions, which is not good. But then in the game against Rutgers, he smoked them. He had 538 yards total and 4 TDs. So he is capable of putting up huge numbers. It also depends on the level of competition here, because a game against Ohio State, he didn't put up huge numbers. And then some of these lower tier teams, he's been able to put up good games. I feel like Illinois is a possibility for DeMond to have a good game. It's in Seattle. It's in Washington. It's a rowdy crowd. The Washington Husky crowd is definitely a very rowdy crowd. It is an advantage for them. They played well against Ohio State at home. They were in that game for the most part till later when Ohio State kind of separated. I think Washington wins this one. I think DeMond's going to have a good game. I think it's a very close game, though. And I'm going to say a 30-26 game. What do you got, Ian?
Yeah, and I agree. I feel like, too, this offense is built to beat an Illinois-type defense, spread them out a bit, and then find them in the middle of the field, either passing routes or run routes, kind of similar to what Indiana did. it proved that, Illinois' defense can get just smoked and routed. So I feel like, especially with the quarterback play, and I like Washington's defense too, they were able to hold, Ohio State to 24 points. And then, they lost to Michigan and the offense didn't look good. But I feel like they'll rebound here. They're at home. I think they sneak up and bite Illinois here. I'm going to go Huskies winning let's do like 28-20 win for Washington.
Nice. Okay. Next game we have is Texas A&M, LSU. This A&M team, undefeated at this point. Huge win against Notre Dame, 41-40. Last week, they struggled against Arkansas. Like, Arkansas put up a ton of points. 45-42, they win that game. But I think this defense can be had. The problem is LSU's offense is not good enough to take advantage of that. So I feel like Texas A&M could probably hold LSU to a similar output as they had against Florida. So I'm saying around like the 17-20 point output for LSU's offense. And LSU's defense has been proven to get scored on. Last week against Vanderbilt, they lost 31-24. They struggled to really do anything defensively against Vandy. And I feel like A&M's offense is way more talented than Vandy, especially with Moss and Concepcion and what's the other guy's name? Craver. And, they're poised to put up points. They put up points almost every week outside of maybe the Mississippi State and Auburn game. So I feel like they're going to score points here. I think it's going to be like a 34-20 game. What do you got?
This is my upset.
Oh, whoa.
Because for a few reasons. One,
hear it.
That defensive performance against Arkansas was really bad. It looked bad. And then that first quarter performance against Florida the week before was not looking good, but they adjusted. They could not adjust to Arkansas because they were able to adapt, but it showed this defense is not perfect. And as bad as LSU's offense is, you cannot deny their defense is still really good. Here's the other problem in doing the homework on this game. LSU hasn't lost to A&M ever at home in the SEC when both teams were in the SEC. The last time they lost to A&M at Death Valley was in 1994. And it's a dreaded night game. In Death Valley, crowd obviously, regardless of the record, is going to be on them. And I didn't look up the stat, but I honestly cannot remember. I honestly think it might have been 2009 or something like that, the last time a team not named Bama won a night game in Death Valley, and that was the Florida Gators.
Florida Gators, yeah.
I think in this one, I think LSU's defense just, steps up, they rebound, and I feel like the offense gets enough big plays on A&M's defense because it showed that if you can just out-athlete the linebackers, you can get in the backfield pretty easily, get behind them pretty easily. So I'm going to take LSU in an upset. I think they get it done, and I'm going to go with a 30-26 win for the Tigers.
All right. This is going to be posted. This will be the one on TikTok. So
I have no problem being wrong on this one. Trust me. Nothing makes me happier than laughing.
You'll take the heat because it seems like I'm taking most of the heat most of the time on these. So I'm going to let you take the heat. And I will respond, but I'm going to be like, I'm going to clarify. This was Ian's pick, not my pick.
Even if I'm wrong, I win because I get to laugh at Brian Kelly again.
Yeah, true. Okay. This thing didn't do it. Okay. Next game we have is Colorado, Utah. It's in Salt Lake City. Utah is just the better team. Like Colorado, they beat Iowa State last week and good for them, but Dampier is just going to run all over them. Like that, what that system is does, like their run first system is meant to take advantage of lesser talented teams. And that Colorado team is not as talented as the Utah team. You know, the offensive line is super stout, and you know, they just run all over people. And I don't love Dampier in the offensive aerial attack, but he still makes plays with his legs, and he does enough in the passing attack to keep them honest for the run game, and so they can't load the box. So, you know, I expect, you know, Utah to win probably by like 20 points. I'm going to go like 38 to like 17. What do you got?
Yeah, and I just don't like this defense going up against Colorado's defense going up against this offense. And even more so, Colorado's offense hasn't really been that good looking, especially against Big 12 competition. I just see Utah just looking like the better team. If I remember correctly, like Colorado hasn't won in Salt Lake City since like they first joined the Pac-12 in like 2011 or something like that. So it's been a while. So I think they get it done. I'm going to go with Utah runs away with like a 38-20 win for the Utes.
Okay, I'm going to let you do it. G5 Gibson with his G5 game of the week.
So obviously UNLV and Boise State have kind of taken center stage in the Mountain West, but San Diego State and Fresno State aren't too far behind here. And I think the key in this game is for San Diego State, they actually have, you know, one of the reasons I picked this game is that they have the like top 10 defense in the country. It's just been the offense that has really let them down in some of these games. But right now, they are one of the last teams that are still undefeated. Credit, they've only played 2 conference games, but they're 2-0 in conference play. And this is going to be one of their toughest tests moving forward. So there's very good chance that if San Diego State wins this game, it's going to be Boise State and them in the Mountain West championship. Meanwhile, you know, for Fresno State in this game, defensively, they've looked pretty good too, but I think it's a matter of how well the offenses respond to these. I feel like San Diego State's defense can get the Bulldogs stopped on more occasions than Fresno State can. So I think the Aztecs get it done. I'm going to go with let's do like a 28-23 win. I think they get enough scores late that San Diego State puts it away, and it might come down to like a couple drives that get stalled for Fresno State. Also, shout out to San Diego State, still having some of the best helmets in all of college football.
Yeah, and an amazing stadium. I know you probably have never been out there, but like it's only a couple years old, and I was out there like 2 years ago, and it's just a stellar stadium, just state of the art. Just they made it extremely like the way it's designed. There's like an outdoor bar area that like looks over the field, and there's like a DJ in the student section, and it's just they knocked it out of the park with that one. They really did. It's not even that big. It's only like it's about the same size as USF's going to be, and so it's like that's why I was like I did like a little video and like sent it out when it did, and like I was like, man, this is what USF needs to do, like this exact type of environment, and they're doing that. They're the bar that USF is creating is going to be the longest bar in Florida. So they definitely knew what they were doing. But as far as my pick for this game, I'm just going to go opposite you because like I don't know a ton about either of these two schools, but just looking at Fresno State's schedule and some of their wins, they lost to Kansas and they lost to another loss. Let me see where it is. They lost to but they lost to Colorado State. That's what it was. But they did beat Nevada and they beat Hawaii and they beat Oregon State. Oregon State's kind of terrible this year, but I don't know. I feel like Fresno just seems like they could do it here. I don't know a ton between the two of them, but I'm just going to throw it out there to be opposite you. So I'm going to say Fresno State wins like, I don't know, 28 to like 20. Okay, that is the show, everyone. Enjoy these games on Saturday. You can reach us at haterradio.com. I finally have another article. I did one. So I've got that there for you guys to look at. It's about Billy Napier's firing and a little look into what we can expect going forward. And then, Ian, are you able to do, I'm throwing you on the spot, are you able to do a Memphis USF article for Friday by chance?
I'm gonna try.
Well, don't worry. If you can't, it's all right. We won't do it. So we're not going to do that article. But what I can have you do, right? Whatever happens in the game, write an article for me on Sunday. So
I can do that.
Yeah. So we'll have a recap of the game on Sunday, and then that's it. So find us on socials for type in Hater Radio, comes right up. Ian's, what's your social again?
Yeah, at Twitter, it's at G5 Gibson, and on YouTube and Instagram, it's at G_Gator_G.
Okay, that's the show, y'all. We'll talk to you on Sunday. The show is Sunday and Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, and we'll talk to y'all then. Take care.